Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. I am All in Crypto, and today we're going to be looking at Cardano, and we are going to be talking about the age of Voltaire, which is upon us. We're going to be looking at a number of clips from Charles Hoskinson himself to some of the individuals under the management of IOHK, talking about Voltaire, talking about where we are in regards to CIP 1694, and also really explaining what this is going to bring forth. So that's exactly what this video is going to be about. Really, where I want to start is with Voltaire and what is Voltaire. We're also actually going to be looking a little bit at the Bitcoin white paper because Cardano was really a project that was built for you guys. And you can see the strength in the Cardano community, probably most prominently on Twitter, but on Reddit, on YouTube, across the board. And the reason I believe for this is because Cardano, and many people understand this, some don't, was built for you guys to own it and to be a part of it. You know, it was built in the same fashion that Bitcoin was built to ultimately decentralize and come up with a fair peer-to-peer cash system, e-cash system, I should say. Cardano was built to be a fair, decentralized operating system for everybody without barriers, and introducing things like sovereign identity and a multitude of other things. And the world of possibilities that surround that really are revolutionary, not just in the developing world where they don't have connection to many of these things. They don't even have basic things like identity in many places, financial inclusion, so on and so forth. But actually in the developed world with many things such as identity again and sovereign identity and a whole litany of other things. And never in history has there been for everyone. There has been historical examples of where people have owned a part of the world's operating systems, but never in history has it been so decentralized and built for not just a group of select elites, but for everyone. And this is one reason that Cardano gets me so excited. So let's get into the video, guys. Let's start things off with what Voltaire actually is. So the Voltaire era of Cardano will provide the final pieces required for the Cardano network to become a self-sustained system. With the introduction of a voting and treasury system, network participants will be able to use their stake and voting rights to influence the future development of the network. For the Cardano network to become truly decentralized, it requires not only the distributed infrastructure introduced during the Shell era, but also the capacity to be maintained and improved over time in a decentralized way. To that end, the Voltaire era will add the ability for network participants to present Cardano improvement proposals, known as SIPs. We'll look at SIP 1694 in just a second, that can be voted on by stakeholders, leveraging the already existing staking and delegation process. To fund the future development of the network, Voltaire will also see the addition of a treasury system whereby a fraction of all transaction fees will be pooled to provide funds for development activities undertaken following the voting process. So this is huge, a self-governing mechanism, a self-funding mechanism for Cardano to ensure its development. And as Cardano brings on more and more users, this fund will grow. It's almost like Cardano has its own VC, but its VC is actually working not just to make money, but to actually improve and further the community, the blockchain, and everything in between. So this treasury factor is really a unique feature. You know, one of the beautiful things about Cardano is it was made, or it was born out of forward thinking. They didn't just rush to build a blockchain. They said, okay, let's come up with a framework and the consensus for a blockchain, but let's look at all aspects of a blockchain and where it might be 10 years down the line. And let's figure that out now so that when we get there, which Cardano has always been termed a kind of slow blockchain to release, but actually it's really worked in its favor. And you're seeing a lot of the magnificent things that were put and that came up with before we got to this stage actually now take shape. You know, it really is some pretty amazing things that are taking place on Cardano. We've looked at Cardano, the Ouroboros consensus being meant for multiple chains in regards to being the consensus for them and the truth source. This is a totally different aspect in regards to voting. So with both a voting and a treasury system in place, Cardano will be a truly decentralized and no longer under IOHK's management. Instead, Cardano's future will be in the hands of the community, who will have everything they need to grow and evolve Cardano from the secure, decentralized basis established by IOHK. Very, very exciting, ladies and gentlemen. Kind of gives you a little bit of anxiety as well, thinking about how everybody is going to be able to have a say and direct Cardano. It's going to become its own living and breathing organism. Or as long as somebody is keeping a record of the ledger, just like Bitcoin, it will never die. Whether governments try and ban it or whether they try and, hinder it, ultimately it will live on. It's exceptionally exciting, and Cardano, from an experimental point of view, has been nothing short of a success, just like Bitcoin. Of course, altcoins are at an earlier stage than perhaps Bitcoin. Let's look at what CIP 1694 is and why this is a pretty big step in regards to the Voltaire era. Now, looking at the previous eras that we've gone through Byron, Shelley, Gauguin, and Basho, which is currently dealing with scaling. I would say we're still very much in that era, but we're kind of overlapping Voltaire. And with the proposal of CIP 1694, we're heading into the age of Voltaire, laying down the foundations for decentralized decision-making. This SIP describes a mechanism for on-chain governance that will underpin the Voltaire phase of Cardano. The document builds on and extends the original Cardano governance scheme that was based on a fixed number of governance keys. It aims to provide the first steps that is both valuable and technical achievements in the near term as part of the proposed Voltaire governance system. It also seeks to act as a jump-off point for continuing community input, including on appropriate thresholds, settings, and other on-chain settings. Subsequently, proposal may adopt and extend this proposal to meet the emerging governance needs. So there's a council. Again, very rarely in history have, or if ever, everybody been called to govern something and have an equal share and say in something. It is the truest form potentially of democracy, what Cardano is really trying to do. There's a lot of social aspects as well as financial or technological with ADA. Now, I want to play a clip from a input output video of I think it was Tim actually explaining where the kind of governance state is at the moment and the extra components that it's now adding onto it. So we'll go ahead and play that. Then we'll touch on the Bitcoin white paper very, very briefly and look at some clips from Charles Hoskinson talking and expanding a bit more on Voltaire.
Kevin, could you explain a little bit about how the new roles are proposed within SIP 1694?
Absolutely, Adi. So as Jared and Matthias have said, at present there are two groups that are involved in the Cardano governance. There are the Genesis entities who are responsible for preparing and submitting governance actions on the chain, protocol parameter changes, treasury withdrawals, hard forks, and who will then ratify those governance actions before they're enacted. And then the stake pool operators who will be involved in determining whether a hard fork happens or not. So those are the two groups we have at the moment. With SIP 1694, we're introducing two additional groups. The first group is a group of delegate representatives, DREPs, and the idea is that ADA holders will be able to delegate their ADA to these delegate representatives. Now, the representatives could be individuals, they could be state credentials of any kind, they can be special types of DREP, but it will also be possible to register as a DREP yourself, to represent your own views on governance on the blockchain. So we will have a system that will range from fully representative democracy for those who wish to be less engaged with the on-chain Cardano governance process to a full system of liquid democracy where ADA holders can represent themselves and can cast their own votes with respect to any governance action which is up for consideration.
Very interesting. You know, Voltaire is literally upon us, guys. SIP 1694 is a big step towards that. This, of course, is the Bitcoin white paper. And before I take a look at this, we'll play a quick clip of Charles Hoskinson talking about his vision for Cardano. We'll look at this and then we'll talk about Voltaire and the opportunity that Voltaire brings. And I've often said that actually I believe Bitcoin maxis, if they only got rid of the stubbornness that they have and looked at Cardano on its own merits, its philosophies, its principles, they would really like it because they would find that it's very similar to Bitcoin, only trying to do something perhaps different with smart contracts and adding an extra layer of capability to that sovereignty that Bitcoin brings forth to the table. Very interesting stuff. I'm quite interested in politics myself. It's one reason I think blockchain is really so interesting, because it's potentially going to change the way that politics works in certain areas. I don't see governments giving up those reins, but I do even think governments will use blockchain for voting, probably their own blockchain though, for pretty obvious reasons. But let's play this clip of Charles Hoskinson talking about Cardano, look at the Bitcoin white paper, and then we'll finish things off with the opportunities he thinks Voltaire brings.
Cardano, as I built it and wrote in why Cardano was intended to be a financial operating system for those who didn't have one, which basically meant entire economies could run on it. And that's why we went, my company, to Africa and spent years of our lives in the trenches, in war zones, in some of the poorest countries in the world, in some of the most difficult jurisdictions to operate in, and tried as hard as we could to drive business adoption and learn what the needs are there so we could give economic identity to those who didn't have it. And it was our belief that Cardano as a protocol would be well suited if it evolved in the right direction to accommodate and meet the needs of those people. At the end of the day, it's the decision of the community as a whole whether they want the protocol to evolve in that direction or evolve in a different direction. It's not my decision. I just wrote down my aspirations and hopes, and now that there are 3 million people floating around, it's ultimately your choice and decision where you want to go and what you want to do. I hope the protocol is useful for the things that I've done, or else the last 4 or 5 years of my life would be very frustrated.
Very interesting, you know, and this is something I think people often forget. Cardano was built to be a lot more than just speculated on. You know, it was built to actually do something, to serve a purpose, to bridge a gap. And it doesn't just have to be in the developing world, the world where maybe there's a lot less financial infrastructure or economic infrastructure, and Cardano could essentially come in and change a lot of that and provide an alternative and a pathway there. But it can actually do a lot for the sort of traditional world, and the use cases here are becoming more and more apparent. You know, if you look at Bitcoin and what Bitcoin was supposed to, it was supposed to be an inclusive, fair cash for all that wasn't government and financial institution controlled. Cardano is very much the same thing, just with smart contracts, and the inherent difference, of course, is the tokens underlying them and the consensus. But the philosophies of Bitcoin were very much applied to Cardano. And actually, Cardano is one of the few blockchains where we see this push towards absolute decentralization from a governance aspect. Very, very interesting stuff. Let's finish off with a clip of Charles talking about Voltaire and some of the unique benefits and features he thinks it's going to bring to the table.
So my hope in the age of Voltaire is that we are able to converge to a better state and show people how to debate, show people how to make decisions, show people how to arrive at principles. And you know what? There's going to be a lot of hiccups along the way, a lot of very unreasonable people along the way, a lot of misrepresentations along the way. But, you know, we're just have to get it done. It was the last part of the roadmap for a reason, because it was the hardest part. I saved the best for last, and we'll just see where we get. For what it's worth, it's been a hell of a ride, and we've all endured a lot together. And it would be a real shame for the ride to come to an end with an ultimate failure, and for all the things we have achieved to be subjugated as a footnote in history as we move to a world of CBDCs, permission systems, and ultimately the few in charge of the many. For too much of human history, we've lived in that reality and we've accepted it as just the way things are. And every now and then, there's a revolution. Every now and then, there's a crazy group of people who think we can do things differently, whether it be the French Revolution or the American Revolution, the Athenian democracy, or every other ragtag anarchist in between that had a better idea. But all too often, cynicism kicked in. All too often, the founders behind those movements retired, died, or got co-opted, and the replacements didn't live up to the virtues. What made cryptocurrencies so special is it replaced don't be evil with can't be evil. And what makes cryptocurrencies so special is for the first time in any of our lives, we really do have a chance to redefine how everything works if only we think carefully about it. This does not mean a libertarian utopia where each and every person has absolute freedom in every regard and respect, because after all, we're human. And by living our lives this way, in absolute freedom in every respect, those actions will inevitably harm others. If you don't believe me, live downstream of a rancher who decides every day it's a good idea to pour toxic chemicals into the river that crosses your land and poisons your cattle. Obviously, you'd say that's a problem, but he doesn't feel it. It's not his water, goes downstream, doesn't poison his cattle, poisons yours. You see, and that's the problem. So you need to live in a society of rules and agreements, a society of basic rights, non-aggression, and some respect that there are greater concerns at times than the individual.
And that's exactly what Cardano is trying to do. Very interesting, very exciting for not just the future of Cardano, but the cryptocurrency space generally. We'll keep you up to date with it on this channel. That's all I've got for you guys. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to check out the All In Crypto Stake Pool. All In is the ticker.